Welcome to Learn English Easy. And the stack of sources we have in front of us, it feels like the plot of a political thriller, except it's actually happening.
It really is. I think we're looking at a singular moment where the past, the present, and the future of Western alliances are all colliding at once.
And we can see it so clearly. We've got this massive, just visceral diplomatic row between the UK and the US over comments about the war in Afghanistan. That's the past.
Then you have these incredibly high-stakes peace talks happening right now as we speak in Abu Dhabi. That's between the US, Russia, and Ukraine. That's all about the future.
And then connecting it all, we have this fascinating, and I have to say, slightly terrifying academic study that uses AI to measure exactly how much trust is left in NATO, which tells us everything about the present.
It is a perfect storm. Usually, we look at these things in isolation. We talk about the special relationship on one day and the Ukraine war on another. But today, we're going to connect the dots. We're going to see how an insult about a war that ended 5 years ago is actually poisoning a peace deal that hasn't even been signed yet.
Let's dive in. And I think we have to start with the headline that woke everyone up in London this morning. It is dominating the news cycle over there, and for very, very good reason.
The absolute insult.
That's the phrase everyone is using. So let's set the scene for you. President Donald Trump was at the World Economic Forum in Davos.
Right. The Swiss Alps, you've got the private jets, the global elite, all that.
Exactly. And usually Davos is all about economics, right? It's global trade, maybe some high-minded talk about climate change, people drinking expensive coffee and discussing interest rates.
But Trump decided to pivot, not to economics, but to history.
Yeah.
Specifically, the history of the war in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I'm looking at the transcript here from Big Story Network and also Sky News. He's doing an interview with Fox News, and he's talking about NATO allies. And he says, and I'm quoting here, "We've never needed them. We have never really asked anything of them."
Which,
yeah,
just pausing on that for a second, that claim alone it's breathtaking, given the entire history of Article 5 and why it was invoked in the first place.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a minute, just to push on this. You know I like to. He runs on America First. If you look at the raw numbers, the tonnage of bombs, the number of aircraft carriers, the sheer military budget, is he, in a purely material sense, wrong? Does the U.S. need the UK military?
If you're looking at it like spreadsheet of military hardware, maybe not. I mean, if you're playing a video game where only the biggest tank wins, sure, the U.S. wins. But that completely misses the fundamental point of how the Afghanistan war and, frankly, how international relations actually work.
Oh.
Afghanistan wasn't a war of overwhelming force. It was a war of intelligence, of holding terrain, of local relationships, of legitimacy. You can't occupy a province with an F-35.
You need boots on the ground.
You need boots on the ground. And that's where his next comment crosses the line from just, boastful rhetoric to something much more damaging. He gets specific.
This is the part that really landed.
Yes. He says, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little back, a little off the front lines.
Stayed a little back. That's the line. That's the knife twist. Those 4 words have set the entire British government and the British public on fire.
And you can understand why. It implies cowardice. It implies they were there for the photo op, but not for the actual fight. And the reaction in London was immediate, and it was visceral. You have Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who usually tries to be quite diplomatic, very measured.
He's a former prosecutor. He chooses his words carefully.
Very carefully. And he called it, frankly, appalling and insulting. He didn't mince words at all.
And John Healey, the UK Defense Secretary, he didn't just get mad, he brought receipts. He came out immediately with the numbers. 457.
457 British deaths in Afghanistan.
That's not just a number. Each one of those is a family, a story.
It represents a whole generation of soldiers. And Sky News did a fantastic fact check right after the comments aired. They pointed out that British troops were there from the very, very beginning. We're talking Tora Bora.
The hunt for bin Laden in the caves, right at the start.
The very start, special forces. And they were there all the way to the absolute bitter end in August 2021, during that chaotic evacuation of Kabul. They were some of the last soldiers out.
But let's talk about the geography of this staying back claim, because that implies they were in the safe zones, right? Maybe guarding a quiet airbase somewhere in the north.
Anyone who knows anything about the geography of that war knows the name Helmand Province.
The Green Zone.
Yes. And Green Zone sounds pleasant, doesn't it? Sounds like a park. But in Helmand, the Green Zone was the agricultural heartland along the river.
Yeah.
It was the poppy fields, the irrigation ditches, the mud-walled compounds. It was a complete maze.
And it was the heart of the Taliban insurgency.
It was one of the deadliest places on Earth for a solid decade. It was IED alley. Ambushes were a daily occurrence. The British were tasked with holding that ground. They weren't back. They were the tip of the spear in the most kinetic, the most violent environment in the entire country.
So when a British veteran or a family who lost someone in Helmand hears the American president say they stayed back, it's not a political disagreement.
No, it's a complete rejection of their reality. It's an erasure of their sacrifice.
And there's this one story from PBS and The Guardian that just brings this home in a really heartbreaking way. They spoke to the mother of a soldier named Ben Parkinson.
I know his story. He's the most severely wounded British soldier to have survived the conflict.
It's an absolute miracle he's alive. He lost both legs, suffered catastrophic brain damage, broke his back. He requires 24-hour care for the rest of his life.
And his mother, Diane Durney, she heard these comments from the president, and she called it the ultimate insult. She actually issued a challenge to Trump. She said, essentially, come here. Come to Doncaster, look at my son, look at the life he has to lead 19 years later because of what he did in that war, and then look him in the eye and tell him he stayed back.
It's just gut-wrenching. It completely takes it out of the realm of politics and puts it squarely in the realm of basic human decency.
And you saw this reaction ripple across the alliance. It wasn't just the Brits. The Polish foreign minister came out and said no one has the right to mock their soldier service. You had Adam Price. He's the Danish writer who created the TV show Borgen.
Oh, great show.
Fantastic show. He wrote a piece in The Guardian about it. Denmark lost 44 soldiers in Afghanistan.
Which, for a country the size of Denmark, is a huge number.
Per capita, that is a massive, massive loss. It's a national trauma for them. So on a human level, this is just cruel. But we need to look at this analytically. You brought something up earlier, this idea that there's a strategy at play here. You called it the memory hole strategy.
Yeah, that's what the analysis from Big Story Network suggests. They argue we shouldn't just dismiss this as a gaffe, not just, oh, Trump is being Trump, saying inflammatory things. They call it a strategic devaluation of alliance.
Strategic devaluation. That's a very specific, very cold term. Let's unpack that. What does that mean in practice?
Well, you explain it. How does an alliance actually work at its core?
Deep down, they're built on a concept of, well, of debt and reciprocity. I bled for you yesterday, so you will have my back and protect me tomorrow. It's a blood debt, really. Think about it. Article 5 of NATO was invoked only once in its entire history.
After 9/11.
After 9/11. The Allies didn't go to Afghanistan because the Taliban attacked London or Paris or Copenhagen.
No, they went because America was attacked.
Exactly. They invoked the Treaty for America. So logically, on a moral balance sheet, the U.S. owes them. The U.S. is in the red. The Allies are in the black. They have credit in the bank.
But what happens if you rewrite history?
Exactly. If you flip the entire narrative, you say, actually, you didn't really do anything. You stayed back. You were freeloaders even when you were supposedly fighting alongside us. Then what happens to that moral debt?
It just vanishes. It's like declaring bankruptcy on your obligations.
Precisely. If the U.S. can portray itself as the perpetual victim of freeloading allies, even in a war where those allies died by the hundreds, it nullifies the debt. It completely clears the ledger. And if the ledger is clear, it means the U.S. owes the U.K. absolutely nothing.
That is an incredibly cynical way to look at the world.
It is. But you have to admit, it's also strategic. It sets the stage for a purely transactional relationship from this point forward. If historical loyalty doesn't count, if blood spilled in the past has no value today, then every single new interaction is a zero-sum trade.
It's not, what did you do for me then? It's, what can you do for me right now?
It's like resetting a video game. Your high score from the last level doesn't matter. Everyone starts at zero every single time. And that is terrifying for countries like the UK or Poland or Estonia who rely on that shared history as their ultimate security guarantee. They bank on that history. They think America won't abandon us because look at what we did together.
And Trump is effectively saying, we didn't do anything together.
They weren't really there.
This leads us perfectly into the state of the relationship between the UK and the US specifically. Because if any country on earth thinks it has credit in the bank with America, it's the UK. We call it the special relationship.
A term coined by Winston Churchill himself.
We have some great background on this from a few sources, including a really deep academic paper from open edition journals. It's called Lost in Transition. And it asks a pretty scary question. Is the special relationship actually surviving this period of political uncertainty?
To understand the fall, you really have to understand the height it's falling from. You mentioned Churchill. There's that famous anecdote, which I absolutely love, about Churchill staying at the White House with FDR during World War II.
Oh, this is a classic story.
It just paints the perfect picture. So FDR rolls his wheelchair into the guest room to talk to Churchill about some urgent war strategy. He opens the door, and Churchill's just standing there, fresh out of the bath, completely naked.
Not a towel in sight.
Stark naked.
Oh.
And Churchill doesn't even flinch. He doesn't grab a robe. He just spreads his arms wide and says, "You see, Mr. President, I have nothing to hide from you."
Now that is the definition of an intimate relationship.
It is. And FDR apparently joked later that Churchill was pink and white all over. But that moment, it captures the spirit of that 20th century alliance. Total trust, nothing to hide, a common purpose, a shared destiny.
And now, you fast forward to 2026, we don't have Churchills and FDR. We have Keir Starmer, a Labour Prime Minister, a methodical, cautious former prosecutor trying to deal with a second Trump term. And from what we're reading, it sounds like Starmer has been doing absolute yoga twists to try and make this work.
He really has. The open edition paper details this charm offensive that he's been on. It's actually quite impressive how hard Starmer has tried. Did you know he was the very first world leader to call Trump after the assassination attempt back in July 2024?
Really? The first one?
Yeah.
Before any of his more natural ideological allies?
The very first. He beat everyone else to the punch. He knew he had to get in there and establish that connection early. And then you remember that dinner in New York? 2 hours long?
Yeah.
Trump came out and called Starmer very popular.
Then Starmer brought the ultimate weapon with him.
The nuclear option.
No, the royal option, the king.
Yes, King Charles.
Starmer brought a letter from King Charles inviting Trump for a second state visit. The paper notes that Starmer was emphasizing how unprecedented this was. He was basically throwing all the pomp and circumstance, the gold carriages, the red carpets of the British monarchy at Trump to keep the relationship sweet.
But it's not really working, is it? Or at least the cracks are definitely showing through all that gold paint.
It seems complicated. The personal chemistry between Starmer and Trump seems, well, it seems managed. They can sit at a dinner table. But the friction points are structural. They're political. They run deeper than just, do they like each other?
And we have to talk about the labor for Kamala thing, because that feels like the pebble in the shoe that just keeps causing a blister.
It's a huge sore spot.
So, for listeners who might have missed this saga, during the U.S. election, a LinkedIn post, of all things, popped up from a labor staffer. It said, "Hey, we've got about 100 people going to North Carolina and Nevada to campaign for Kamala Harris. Who wants to join us?"
And Trump's campaign team went nuclear. They filed a legal complaint. They framed it as foreign interference in the election.
Even though technically they were individual volunteers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, British people campaign in U.S. elections all the time. Republicans came over to help the Tories.
Legally, it was probably fine. Individuals can volunteer. But politically, it was a disaster. It looked like the ruling party of the United Kingdom Labour was sending its foot soldiers to try and stop Trump from getting elected. That is something that's very hard to forget. Trump demands absolute loyalty, and that looked like a deep betrayal.
And then you add Elon Musk into the mix.
Right. Trump's biggest and most powerful ally in the media space. The man who holds the keys to the digital public square.
And Musk has been attacking the Starmer government relentlessly on X, formerly Twitter, about their online safety laws.
Yeah, he is not holding back at all.
He's retweeting critics. He's calling the UK government authoritarian. He was predicting civil war in Britain during some of the riots. I mean, when you have the president's closest ally in the tech world digitally shelling the prime minister every single week, that creates an environment of profound distrust that one nice dinner in New York just can't fix.
But the open edition paper makes a really important distinction, doesn't it? It says the special relationship has survived bad personal chemistry before. I mean, Wilson and Johnson, Thatcher and Reagan had huge fights over the Falklands.
That's true. And usually the theory is that even if the leaders hate each other, the institutions keep working. The deep state, if you want to use that term, the civil service. MI6 and the CIA keep sharing secrets. The militaries keep training together. That's the engine room of the relationship. It's supposed to just hum along, regardless of who is in the White House.
But the paper suggests that the engine room is starting to overheat.
That's the real worry. The whole reason the paper is titled Lost in Transition is that it argues the institutional pillars are now under serious strain because of who Trump is appointing to key positions.
It's not about policy, it's about personnel.
Exactly. You have Trump loyalists entering the U.S. intelligence community. The source mentions names like Kash Patel, Dan Bongino. And it says London is deeply anxious because these are not the traditional Atlanticists who believe in the alliance as a kind of sacred duty. They are Maillet loyalists who view everything, including intelligence, transactionally.
So let's play that out. If you're an MI6 officer in London and you have a critical source, maybe inside the Kremlin, do you feel comfortable sharing that raw intelligence with a U.S. intelligence community that you fear might leak it, or use it as leverage against you, or where the president might just blurt it out in a meeting?
That is the question keeping people awake at night in Whitehall. If that trust evaporates at the working level, spy to spy, general to general, then the special relationship becomes just a photo op. It becomes hollow.
And when you combine that hidden institutional fear with the president publicly insulting the British military's record in Afghanistan, you can see why the entire foundation is cracking.
We feel this tension emotionally when we read the quotes. We can see the diplomatic awkwardness. But the question is, can we measure it? Because usually, alliance unity is just a vibe. It's a feeling you have.
Until now. And this brings us to one of the most interesting sources in our stack today. It's a preprint paper from RQStuff, and it's titled AI Approaches to Qualitative and Quantitative News Analytics on NATO Unity.
Pretty wild concept. They basically used an AI, specifically GPT 4.1, to read the internet and then tell us how united NATO actually is.
It's a brilliant methodology, but hold on. Why is this so special? I mean, why can't I just open ChatGPT and type, "Is NATO united?" and get an answer? Why do you need a whole research paper for this?
That is the crucial distinction. If you just ask a standard AI model, it's going to hallucinate or it's going to give you a very generic, polite answer based on training data from 2 years ago. They're basically guessing. These researchers use something different. It's called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG.
RAG. Okay, for the non-coders listening, break that down for us.
Think of it like this. It's the difference between a closed book exam and an open book exam. Standard AI is taking a test from memory. RAG is like giving the AI a massive specific library of current documents and telling it, read these, and you can only answer based on what you find right here in these texts.
So they fed it a very specific diet of information.
A very specific and very fresh diet. They fed the AI thousands of news articles, government statements, YouTube comments, and Reddit discussions from 2021 all the way up to 2025.
They included YouTube comments.
They did.
Usually looking at a YouTube comment section is a recipe for losing your faith in humanity, not for gaining valuable insight.
Chuckles. Normally, yes. But in this context, it's genius. Because if you only look at official government statements, of course everything looks fine. Everyone's always ironclad. But the digital noise, the Reddit threads, the comments under news clips, that's where actual voter sentiment lives. That's the pulse of public opinion.
So they took all this content and asked the AI to score it.
Yes. On a simple scale of -5 to +5, -5 means the alliance is dead, everyone hates each other. +5 means we are brothers in arms, inseparable forever. 0 is neutral.
So what did the machine find? What's the diagnosis? Is the patient alive?
Well, the trend lines are,
Yeah.
let's say they're concerning. The paper shows that unity is highly event-dependent.
Which means it only spikes when something scary happens.
Exactly. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the unity score shot up. Fear is a great unifier. When Finland and Sweden joined NATO, boom, another spike. Everyone felt good. The club was growing and strong. But in between those major events, the baseline is trending steadily downward. It's like a slow leak in a tire.
It's like a heartbeat that's getting weaker between each pump.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
But the scariest metric in the entire paper isn't the general unity score. It's the one they call Article 5 trust.
Okay, explain that one.
Article 5 is the whole point of NATO. It's the one for all for one clause. If one member is attacked, everyone responds. That is the core promise. So the AI measured how much people actually believe that will happen. And it's collapsing. The analysis shows this massive divergence in opinion. If you look at official government websites, defense.gov, army.mil, nato.nt, the score is always high and positive.
Right.
The official sources keep shouting, "We are united, our commitment is ironclad."
But the internet disagrees.
The internet strongly disagrees. The skeptical, critical sources, and this includes mainstream outlets like the New York Times and CNN, and then down into the Reddit and YouTube ecosystem, they show trust plummeting into negative territory. People simply do not believe the U.S. will show up to defend an ally anymore.
And did the AI say why? What's driving that doubt? Is it just general pessimism about the world?
No, it was very specific. The #1 driver it identified is U.S. commitment doubts. The study concludes that public opinion is extremely sensitive to what it calls U.S. political oscillations.
Meaning what the president says.
Exactly. When the U.S. president says something like, they stayed back in Afghanistan, or I won't protect you if you don't pay your bills, the AI picks up an immediate, sharp drop in trust across the entire ecosystem.
That's fascinating because it's quantitative proof of what we felt in the first segment. The insult isn't just words, it actually degrades the system.
It degrades the belief in the system. And an alliance is 90% belief. If Vladimir Putin believes NATO won't fight, then NATO is functionally useless, even if it has 1 million tanks on paper. Deterrence is entirely psychological.
And the AI is telling us that the psychology is breaking down.
The vital signs are not good.
So we have this historic, deeply personal insult to the UK. We have hard data showing that trust in the alliance's core promise is evaporating. And I just want to pause here because we've been talking about these things in silos. We talked about the British insult. We talked about the AI data. But when you lay them side by side with what is happening in the world today, a really ugly picture starts to form.
It connects directly, and I mean directly, to the talks in Abu Dhabi.
Let's shift gears to the desert. It is Friday. Delegations are in the UAE as we speak. And it's a trilateral meeting, the US, Russia, and Ukraine.
This is hugely significant. For years, the official mantra was nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. But for a long time, it felt like the US and Russia were talking over their heads. Now they are all in the same room, openly.
But the atmosphere in that room, I don't think tense even begins to cover it.
Hostile might be a better word.
Reverent.
And maybe coercive.
We have these reports from The Guardian about a preliminary meeting that happened in Kyiv involving the U.S. Army Secretary, a man named Dan Driscoll, and one attendee described it as a nightmare meeting.
That detail really stuck out to me. Nightmare. You don't use that word for a tough negotiation. You use that for an absolute disaster.
So what made it a nightmare? What happened?
According to the source, Driscoll reportedly told the Ukrainian diplomats, very bluntly, that they should sign the deal that's on the table, or they will face a much worse one later. That is classic strong-arm tactics. It's not, let's find a solution together. It's, take the offer, or we walk away and leave you to the wolves.
So what is this offer? What's on the table? We have a leaked draft of the peace plan, which has been analyzed by CSIS. It's being called the unfinished plan.
It seems to be a complete mess of a document, frankly. There's confusion about whether it's even official. The source says Senator Marco Rubio denied the draft existed, then the White House denied his denial. They're calling it a living, breathing document.
Which is diplomatic speak for nobody agrees on it and we're making it up as we go along.
Pretty much. But the core conflict within the plan is very clear. The U.S.-Russia draft, the one that Trump seems to be backing, calls for Ukraine to effectively cede the Donbas region.
Just give it up.
Withdraw troops, hand over administrative control. Russia keeps the land it has conquered through war.
And the Europeans, they have their own idea, right? They aren't just sitting on the sidelines watching this happen.
No, they've put forward what they're calling the 28-point plan. This is the European attempt to save face and, save Ukraine. It focuses on a ceasefire first. Stop the shooting, freeze the lines where they are, and then start talking. And instead of focusing on giving up land, it talks about things like connectivity and economic integration.
So one plan is basically give up the land and we'll stop shooting. And the other is stop shooting and we'll talk about the land later.
That's a perfect summary. But here's the problem. President Zelensky is in an impossible box. He said in his New Year's address that the deal is 90% ready.
Which sounds good. I mean, 90% is an A-. If I'm 90% done with a project, I'm starting to celebrate.
But then you have to listen to the kicker. His next sentence was, those 10% contain, in fact, everything.
Those 10% contain everything.
Wow, that is a heavy, heavy sentence. He's talking about the territory. He's talking about the very truth of what Ukraine is as a sovereign nation. You can agree on prisoner exchanges, you can agree on grain corridors, you can agree on nuclear power plant safety. That's the 90%. But the 10%? The Donbas, Crimea, sovereignty, that is the whole ball game. That is the soul of the nation.
And Russia isn't budging on that 10%. We're seeing reports from CBS News and the New Arab that the Kremlin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, said just today, Ukraine must leave the Donbas. It's not a negotiation point, it's a precondition.
It's a demand for capitulation. And this is where the recent personnel change in Kyiv becomes really, really interesting. Zelensky just appointed a new chief of staff.
Kirilo Budanov.
The former head of military intelligence. The spy chief.
This guy is a legend in Ukraine, right? He's known for the daring raids, the drone strikes on Moscow. He's this sort of spooky, larger-than-life figure.
He is a hawk of hawks. He is a pure operator. He's the guy who lives and works in the shadows. replacing his previous chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, who was a smooth diplomat, a negotiator, with Budanov signals a massive shift in strategy.
What kind of shift? What message does that send?
Well, it could be one of two things. One, Zelensky is preparing for the talks to fail. If diplomacy dies, you want your top warfighter running the show. You want the asymmetric warfare guy in charge to figure out how to make Russia bleed for years to come.
Okay, what's the other option?
The other option is, it's the Nixon goes to China theory. Maybe only the ultimate hardliner, the spy chief, has the credibility with the army and the public to sign a deeply painful deal. If a diplomat signs away territory, it looks like weakness. But if Budanov signs it, the army knows it must have been the only possible option.
That's a really interesting point. Maybe he's there to ensure that if the deal is a trap, Ukraine is ready to kill the people who are setting the trap.
Exactly. Budanov is not a diplomat. He is a master of asymmetric warfare and counterintelligence. Putting him in charge of the president's office during peace talks is a very specific, very sharp message to Moscow. We are here to negotiate, but we are holding a dagger behind our back.
It feels like everyone at that table is holding a dagger behind their back.
And probably looking for the exits.
Speaking of, of strange moves on the global chessboard, we have to talk about the weirdest subplot in this entire drama. It feels like a distraction, but based on our theme of everything is for sale, maybe it's not.
Greenland.
Greenland, the ultimate real estate deal. I was reading the Guardian live blog this morning, and I honestly thought I was hallucinating. It says, Danish troops have been ordered to be combat ready in Greenland.
It sounds completely absurd, doesn't it? It sounds like a bad pitch for a political comedy. But yes, the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, is currently in Greenland.
Why now?
Because President Trump has renewed his interest in buying the island. Again.
I remember this. He brought this up in his first term, and the whole world laughed. It became a meme for a week.
They laughed then. The Danes are not laughing now. The Guardian is reporting that Trump's administration is pushing this seriously behind the scenes. And the Danish response, moving their troops to combat readiness, shows they are genuinely worried about. Well, we don't know what they're worried about. A forced sale, an economic blockade, some kind of coercive diplomacy.
This connects back to Adam Price, the Borgen writer we mentioned earlier. He wrote that if he had pitched this plot point for his TV show, the U.S. trying to buy Greenland and Denmark, putting its troops on alert, he would have been laughed out of the writer's room. It's too ridiculous for fiction.
Life imitating art. Very poorly. But I don't think we should dismiss the Greenland story as just a quirky distraction. I think it fits the pattern we've been discussing perfectly.
How so?
It's the transactional worldview in its purest, most undiluted form. To Trump, Greenland isn't a sovereign territory with a people, a culture, and a history. It's a strategic asset on a map. It has rare earth minerals. It has a critical geopolitical location. It's a piece of real estate. So why can't he just buy it?
Just like the alliance with the UK.
Exactly. If an alliance is just a service contract, I pay you for protection, then a territory is just real estate. I pay you for the island. It's the exact same worldview. It rejects history, culture, and self-determination in favor of the deal. The art of the deal.
So let's bring this all back together. I want to try and connect segment 1 directly to segment 4, because I think we've found the through line for this whole deep dive.
Okay, let's do it.
In segment 1, we have a President Trump saying the UK stayed back in Afghanistan. He rewrites the history of a rock-solid alliance. He devalues the blood spilled by his country's closest friend. He essentially defaults on the moral debt.
Right. He clears the ledger, as we said.
Now look at segment 4, the peace talks in Abu Dhabi. The U.S. is asking Ukraine to give up sovereign land, the Donbass, in exchange for what exactly? Security guarantees, a promise of future protection.
Trust us, we'll protect you next time. That is the implicit offer on the table.
Exactly. But if you are Zelensky, if you are sitting in that hotel room in Abu Dhabi, and you are watching the news, and you see how the President of the United States talks about the United Kingdom, his closest, oldest, most loyal English-speaking ally, why on earth would you trust a U.S. security guarantee?
That is the killer question, isn't it? If they can erase the British sacrifice in Afghanistan, which is documented, historical, recent, and from their special relationship partner, they can definitely erase a promise made to Ukraine 5 or 10 years from now.
It's so easy to imagine you stayed back in the Donbass anyway.
You didn't really fight for it. You lost the territory yourselves. You can practically write the quotes already.
So the absolute insult regarding Afghanistan's past makes the peace deal for Ukraine's future nearly impossible to sign with any confidence. Because the currency of all peace deals is trust. And right now, the U.S. is printing counterfeit trust.
And the AI data we looked at confirms this. It shows the public knows it. The market for that trust has completely crashed. We are in a trust recession.
And that functional freeze the sources mentioned, that's what it is. It's the paralysis that happens when you realize the person you're negotiating with doesn't believe in the same reality that you do.
Or, even worse, doesn't remember the past the same way you do.
So we have a historic insult to the UK, a fragile, high-pressure negotiation in the UAE, and the data showing that the glue holding the West together is drying out and just crumbling away. It's a very sobering Friday.
It really is. This doesn't feel like just a bad news cycle. It feels like a genuine turning point.
So what do we do with all this? What's the final takeaway for you listening to this on your way home right now?
I keep coming back to that Zelensky quote. Those 10% contain, in fact, everything.
The sticking point, the last hurdle.
Right. And we usually think about that 10% as being about land, Donbass, Crimea, the literal dirt on the ground. But I think in the context of everything we've talked about today, that 10% is actually something else.
What is it?
I think it's about the definition of truth.
Okay, explain that.
The dispute over Afghanistan is a battle over the truth of what happened. Did the British fight and die, or did they hide? The dispute over Ukraine is a battle over the truth of sovereignty. Does a nation truly exist with its own rights, or is it just a buffer zone in a great power game? My point is this. If we can't agree on the truth of what happened in Afghanistan just 5 years ago, how can we possibly agree on what a secure border will look like in Ukraine for the next 50 years?
If we can't agree on the past, we have no foundation on which to build a future.
Exactly. The sources today suggest that the West isn't just fighting Russia, it's fighting a battle over memory itself. And right now it feels like memory is losing.
That is something to think about while you watch the headlines from Abu Dhabi this weekend. Look for the 10%. Look for where the truth is being debated.
And stay skeptical.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Stay curious.
We'll see you next time.